Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi, everybody. I've got a big one here. This one's going to take a little while, I'm almost certain. A few geopolitical things right here at the very top, a ton of education stuff, and a ton of jab-related things as well. So I'm just going to get into it. In fact, I'll start with this. I'm recording this before the Donald Trump-Joe Biden alleged debate here. So I'm certainly going to watch it, but it's going to be far too late for me to record. And I was thinking on doing that, just waiting until the end of that to record and then air it as quickly as possible. But I'm going to basically record one more of these episodes here for Monday. And then I'm going to be taking off at least a week and a half, maybe upwards of 2 weeks. This is normally the time when I do that. Independence Day, of course, and then my birthday after that, and then just basically walking away from this just for a little while. This is essentially one of 2 breaks that I take throughout the entire year, of course, this and Christmas. So anyway, just wanted to mention that first, but I'll definitely be back on Monday, and I highly recommend people watch it. At the very least, it's going to be good TV. And as you heard me say in the last episode, the thing that I want him to do, and by him I mean Trump, the thing that I want him to do is call out Joe Biden regarding any earpiece that he might be wearing. Again, I fully understand that a lot of people have different takes on what they want Trump to say, or how they want him to speak to people and whatever else. But either way, if you know that he's cheating, then call him out on cheating right then and there on the spot, and then just walk off the stage. That's all they have to do. So either way, by the time I air this, it'll probably either already be taking place or it's already happened. But I'll come back on Monday and discuss it a little bit. I fully plan on taking notes and just watching it again as a casual observer, just because I think it's funny. That's all. It's just going to be funny. So anyway, with that aside, a couple other things here. This was thrown my way by Josiah Richwine, and again, this was something that I didn't see back when, of course, it got signed, nor would we notice it necessarily, but this was actually a Senate bill that was signed back on the 16th of January, first month of the year here in 2024, by Edward Markey, Senator Edward Markey, Democrat from Massachusetts. And this is Senate Bill 3589. This seems alarming, and I think that's putting it mildly, but again, where these bills go is another matter. The question also becomes, of course, why are bills like this allowed to be written when they're completely unconstitutional? And again, is it directed toward us, the law-abiding citizen who, again, has our constitutional rights and a million other things? It's highly possible that that's the case. But it says this act may be cited as the Preventing Private Paramilitary Activity Act of 2024. Prohibition of unauthorized private paramilitary activity. So you can think about this 2 ways, and again, if you're thinking about this multidimensionally, you'd have to go at it 2 ways. Is it basically squashing the Second Amendment and our right to assemble and our right to basically form a militia, which is exactly what the Second Amendment is really all about? It was written for us against government. That was the whole point. Or is something like this being written with a gun to the senator's head from good guys, basically saying, we want you to put this out on the table, and we're going to use this against groups like, say, an Antifa kind of group, or other kinds of groups like that basically seek to attack law-abiding citizens for a number of different reasons. But there's numerous definitions, of course, that they have at the beginning, which include ammunition, armed forces, dangerous weapon, explosive or incendiary device, firearm, large capacity ammunition feeding device, and National Guard. And of course, they define what all of those mean, including person, private, paramilitary organization. It says that's the term, or the term private paramilitary organization means any group of 3 or more persons associating under a command structure for the purpose of functioning in public or training to function in public as a combat support, law enforcement, or security services unit. So why would he seek to make that against the law? raises lots of suspicion here. Regularly organized state militia is another term, and the term state. Now, here's what the actual bill says, and I want to run through this very quickly. It says subsection 2742, unauthorized private paramilitary activity. It says A, offense. It shall be unlawful to knowingly, in a circumstance described in subsection B, while acting as part of or on behalf of a private paramilitary organization and armed with a firearm, explosive, or incendiary device or other dangerous weapon. And then there are 5 points below this. Point 1, publicly patrol, drill, or engage in techniques capable of causing bodily injury or death. Now, again, with that, I think of even the Jewish police forces that exist in New York, and they operate on their own, separate from the regular police force. Is he criminalizing that? I think he should, but don't they fall under this definition also? It says number 2, interfere with, interrupt, or attempt to interfere with or interrupt government operations or a government proceeding. See, I don't trust this guy by any stretch. I mean, that should go without saying, but I hear that and I think to myself, he's seeking to again weaponize government against the people so that even if they put in all of their proxy individuals dressed up in MAGA uniforms just like January 6th in 2021, they can then use this against the masses by saying, well, look, they were wearing a MAGA hat and they shot at somebody, so clearly it's all MAGA people. This is not good. It says number 3, interfere with or intimidate another person in that person's exercise of any right under the Constitution of the United States. It says number 4, assume the functions of a law enforcement officer, peace officer, or public official, whether or not acting under color of law, and thereby assert authority or purport, to assert authority over another person without the consent of that person, or number 5, train to engage in any activity described in paragraphs 1 through 4. And then it says circumstances is letter B. It says the circumstances described in the subsection are that the conduct described in subsection A through 1 involves travel across state line or national border, or B, the use of the channels, facilities, or instrumentalities of interstate or foreign commerce. Again, is he talking about us, or is he talking about other foreign agents that are already doing this in our country, which we know is true? It says number 2 involves a firearm, explosive, or incendiary device or dangerous weapon that has traveled in interstate or foreign commerce. Number 3 involves the use of ammunition or a large capacity ammunition feeding device that has traveled in interstate or foreign commerce. Again, is he trying to criminalize gun usership or ownership just because we purchased a gun in one state and now we use it in another or carry it in another? This person's lost their minds. Again, Senator Markey has lost his mind, and I can see the guy's face. I mean, he's slimier than shit. He looks like he's touched a kid or two in his day. Number 3, it says involves the use of ammunition or large capacity ammunition feeding devices that has traveled in interstate or foreign commerce. Number 4, obstructs, delays, or affects interstate of foreign commerce. Or number 5, occurs wholly within any Commonwealth territory or possession of the United States. Sounds like he's trying to criminalize gun ownership and traveling with a gun. He can't be serious. It says C, exceptions. Subsections A shall not apply to 1, the armed forces of the United States, the National Guard, the Naval Militia, any regularly organized state militia, or any unorganized or reserve militia called into service by the state or the United States. Well, that, again, it kind of counteracts what he claims, but at the same time, again, who is this aimed at? It must be aimed at us, your average citizen carrying a gun or even using a gun or traveling with a gun. It says number 2, a group of individuals who, A, associate as a military organization solely for the purpose of historic reenactment or study. These are all the exceptions again. Or B, parade in public as part of a bona fide veterans organization with no intent to engage in the activities prohibited by subsection A. It says number 3, students in an educational institution authorized by the federal government or the state to teach military science as a prescribed part of the course of instruction when under the supervision of a military instructor, or number 4, members of an organization that is authorized under federal or state law to provide paramilitary law enforcement or security services training, or to engage in paramilitary activity, law enforcement, or security services when performing the functions authorized by the law, and, in the case of paramilitary activity and law enforcement functions, when under the direction and control of a governmental authority. And then it says D here, this is the penalty. Any person who violates subsection A shall be fined under this title, imprisoned for not more than 1 year or both, except that, number 1, in the case of a violation that does not result in bodily injury and is committed by a person who has not, prior to the commission of the violation, been convicted of violating a federal or state law, the person may be sentenced to probation for a term of not more than 1 year. 2, in the case of a violation that occurs after a prior conviction under this section has become final, the person shall be fined under this title, imprisoned for not more than 2 years or both. And 3, in the case of a violation that results in damage to property, the person shall be fined under this title, imprisoned for not more than 2 years or both. And 4, in the case of a violation that results in bodily injury, the person shall be fined under this title, imprisoned for not more than 5 years or both. Or B, death. The person shall be fined under this title and imprisoned for any term of years or for life. Now I hear that and I think Black Lives Matter. Is this designed to go after them also? I don't understand the motive of this. I mean, if the motive is to violate our constitutional rights, to carry, to protect ourselves, and to go after government when need be, I clearly have a problem with that. If this is designed to keep paramilitary organizations, i.e. Antifa, Black Lives Matter, what have you, and all the weirdos who dress up the exact same, if it's designed to keep them away, well, again, people don't have the right to burn buildings to the ground, but at the same time, should they be arrested for breaking the law and trespassing and obstructing the regular order of general business and standing in highways? Of course they should be arrested. But yeah, I just don't understand the angle here. It's clearly government overreach. I think that goes without saying. It says, again, forfeiture. In general, number 1, any person who violates subsection A shall forfeit to the United States any property, personal or real, involved in, used, or intended to be used in any manner or part to commit or to facilitate the commission of the violation or the constitutes or is derived from proceeds traceable to the violation. And then number 2, it says procedures, section 413 of the Controlled Substances Act, 21 U.S.C. 853, with the exception of subsections A and D, shall apply to the criminal forfeiture of property pursuant to this subsection. So you have to give up your property if they deem that you've broken the law regarding all of the above so-called infractions. And then here it says, letter F, it says, rule of construction. Nothing in this section shall be construed to preclude a violation of subsection A being committed by a person acting separately from the other members of the private paramilitary organization, provided that the violation is committed in furtherance of or in coordination with the actions of the other members. And then it says, there's a preemption here. It says, nothing in this chapter shall be construed as indicating an intent on the part of Congress to occupy the field in which any provisions of the chapter operate to the exclusion of the state or local laws by the same subject matter, Nor shall any provision of the chapter be construed to invalidate any provision of state law unless the provision of state law is inconsistent with any of the purposes of this chapter. And then there are civil remedies which they list: public right of action, private right of action, again, another forfeiture line here, clerical amendment, and then, it's referred to as the unauthorized private paramilitary activity, 2741. I don't get it. I don't understand this. It doesn't seem good. It seems like it could be used against our real domestic enemies, but at the same time, it seems like it's also designed to be used against us if we decide to organize more so than we already have. So, wanted to bring that to your attention. Again, you can look this up yourself. I even put it on my Gab page. It's Senate Bill 3589. It's probably gone nowhere. It certainly hasn't been signed into law that I know of anyway. And of course, Joe Biden's not the legal president of the United States, which means whatever he signs doesn't matter. So we've always got that going for us. Okay. Now, with those two issues aside, let me mention this just very quickly regarding Julian Assange. Let's use our eyeballs real quick and try to remember what we've heard in the past. Not to mention the Q posts that exist, and there's even another Q post that indicates that he's been protected and is protected. You may recall that when Tucker Carlson and Julian's wife went over to talk with him in whatever area he was being held in, the individual recording the two of them, recording Tucker and his wife, they were having a conversation about the way that Julian looked. And they were saying, well, he seems disheveled, but he's with it. He understands, but he seems like he's, not in the best of health and this, that, and the other. If you saw any of the footage of Julian Assange the other day, video footage or pictures or what have you, did that look like an individual who was out of shape? Did that look like an individual who was being starved to death or tortured? Not to me, anyway. It didn't to me. He looked like a guy who was in pretty decent health, given his height and how tall he is. And he looked like he had been well fed. So again, I just think that there's more going on here than what we know. And there was a lot of theorizing regarding Julian Assange and where he really was and why he was really being held. And one of those theories had to do with this basically being one of the largest CIA sting operations. Not involving the CIA, but a sting operation against the CIA. Because let's face it, it's the CIA, of course, that's had all of this information, and it was WikiLeaks who obtained it. And then it was WikiLeaks that put it all out. Which, by the way, there's also all of this information claiming that all of these emails and all of these files have been deleted off of WikiLeaks' page. As it turns out, that doesn't appear to be true. In fact, one of those links that has a giant list of all of these other links was on greatawakening.win, and I moved it over to my website, or not my website, sorry, my Gab page. So it's over there, and you can take a look at it too. So, again, I'm not going to claim to know what's going on, but there's a lot of ins and outs, and I don't think we're supposed to know everything that's going on, but it doesn't pass the smell test. There's just more happening here, I think, than what we can comprehend, and frankly, I wouldn't take it as a bad thing. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think this could be a very, very good thing, but of course, given the fact that it might be a very good thing, it's not like the good guys are going to come to the forefront and talk about what a great thing this is. In fact, given the entire news cycle right now, and we know all the different pieces and parts and different sides of the war that's taking place, in particular, of course, behind the scenes, look at the way that the entire media headline landscape has taken place. The other day, it was all about Julian Assange, and just like that, he's out of the news. I mean, he's completely out of the news now. Everybody's like, okay, whatever, and then that's it. I mean, it was here and it was gone. And now everything is about the debate. So, that just indicates to me that the timing of him being released was not an accident. It was designed to be buried by one side or the other, probably the good guys, so to speak, in order to, again, control the entire narrative of the debate and get everybody to focus on the debate. Now, again, me personally, I try to focus on lots of different things at the exact same time, which can be rather difficult, but it's something that I think we can all do. I just find the timing of that to be very interesting. And like I said, at face value, he didn't look like a guy who was being starved or tortured or malnourished or whatever. He looks like he's rather healthy. In fact, he looks bigger, certainly in the face, than what I recall him ever being when he wasn't in jail. I'm not saying they serve the best food in jail, but who's to say he was really even in jail? Maybe he was just in some kind of a tennis court setting for personal protection. And maybe the good guys were the ones protecting him because we know a lot of people wanted him dead. And a lot of bad people wanted him dead. So there you go. That's my 2 cents on that. But I find it interesting that all of a sudden the story was there. Now all of a sudden the story's gone. So I don't think that's a timing accident. I think that's a giant on purpose. Let me see here. Let me mention this too. You've probably seen, and I'm putting these in the war videos from time to time, but there's more videos coming out on a consistent basis of citizens catching pedophiles and citizens catching individuals who want to be actual pedophiles and have sex with children. And then, of course, these videos are getting out there where they're being slapped around and they're being kicked in the face and they're being publicly embarrassed, and then, of course, those videos that they're taking with their cell phones are making the rounds. It's an interesting debate, but only because individuals are basically asking the emotional question, do you think this is appropriate? Do you think it's appropriate that individuals are entrapping these pedophiles, that your average citizens are entrapping these pedophiles and then slapping them around in public and beating on him a little bit and getting him to apologize and a number of other things? I would remind people that we used to tar and feather people in public squares in this country. That for a while that was common practice, certainly before we had a constitution. And of course the Constitution wrote out cruel and unusual punishment. And I understand why. Again, people today couldn't probably stand around and watch a tar and feathering. It seems beyond barbaric and incredibly horrific, even to individuals, of course, who would be deemed the worst of society. But this entire attack on people's emotions is a giant on purpose also. It's designed to get people to actually be sympathetic toward pedophiles and be sympathetic toward individuals who want to brutally rape children and say so on the internet and then attempt to meet up with them at a public location in order to do so or lure them back to a place to do so. So watching a fat pedophile get slapped around on camera, I think, is child's play compared to what should happen to them. That's my 2 cents. You can disagree. But at the exact same time, even though we have no laws in this country anymore, and it certainly seems to be the case, and our government is consistently trying to kill us, and law enforcement could easily do the same kind of job that these individuals who are average citizens are actually doing, and yet they don't do it themselves, I still think that the individuals who catch these pedophiles and meet up with them in public and corner them and detain them and do whatever they do, I would encourage them to carry handcuffs on them. If you want to slap them around a little bit, go for it. But what you don't want to do is engage in a felony while you're catching somebody else in a felony, because knowing how the police operate, they'll arrest you. And they might let the pedophile go. They'll say, well, you've got them on text message saying that they want to meet up with a kid and this, that, and the other, and, whatever, and we don't like the way that you do your social vigilante stuff, and you need to let us do our job, and, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they might say all of that, but then they'll say, oh, look, there you are on your own footage catching this guy, and there you are kicking him in the face and slapping him around and punching him in the nose and whatever else. And you can't do that, and that's felonious assault and battery, so we're going to arrest you also. You don't want to give these cops a leg up on anything that you're doing in order to, again, attempt to do the right thing here. I think people should carry handcuffs on them. Carry a pair of handcuffs. And if you're going to be these individuals who are catching these pedophiles, and I commend all of you, by the way, all of the individuals out there doing this, I commend all of them. Just carry handcuffs. You can make a citizen's arrest. That's legal to do. Just don't identify yourself as an officer of the law. Say, turn around, put your hands behind your back. We're making a citizen's arrest. And then put your hands on them and arrest them. And then call the police. That way they're detained. That way they can't go anywhere. You don't have to slap them around and kick them. Just detain them. And then let the police show up, show the police the evidence, fill out a police report, trade out the cuffs with their handcuffs for yours, put them in the back of their squad car and have them take them away. They should be registered sex offenders for what they do online. So, again, in my opinion, I think that there's a more objective way to go about it. Now, shooting them is clearly the only way to solve their problem. Therapy sessions aren't going to fix these people, but we also can't kill them as much as we would like to. And I know that there's been endless cases out there where that's been the case, and they happen to live in a state where the judge is remarkably sympathetic, and then the individual gets off with no charges because, the individual was defending their child against a sexual predator, and they took their life, and so be it. And I don't think anybody sheds a tear over that regarding the death of the pedophile. The point is that in a case like this, where you're catching these individuals away from children, but you're luring them, again, carry handcuffs, arrest them, make a citizen's arrest, call the police immediately. Yes, you can confront them and have a dialogue with them. You can't kidnap them, but that's why you publicly state that you're making a citizen's arrest and you call the police. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I like to think I am sometimes, but even so, I'm running under the assumption that you can make a citizen's arrest when you have proof of a crime that has been committed. And again, luring a child to a public place to have sex with them is a crime. Therefore, call the police first before you approach the individual. And then approach the individual if you know, in fact, that they are going to be there or you have eyes on the scene and you're already there. Again, call the police, but detain them. Don't let them run away. Detain them, identify them with their real name if you can, and then just keep them there until the police show up. So that's my 2 cents, but again, I just don't like reading individuals getting emotionally upset because they're like, look, that person doesn't deserve to get slapped and kicked and punched, and they've apologized for wanting to brutally rape a 14-year-old, so we should just forgive them, and you're being way too violent with these individuals and blah, blah, blah. Nah, they're not being violent enough, as I've said. However, you don't want to get yourself in trouble in the middle of trying to actually do the right thing and put one of these pedophiles away. So there's an approach to take and there's an approach to not take, I think. Just think it out a little more clearly and strategize it maybe a little differently. The public embarrassment portion of it is absolutely fantastic, and using the internet to our advantage is a very good thing. But make a citizen's arrest and call the cops. That would be worth it, I think. Okay. There you go. With that said, let me make one more geopolitical comment here before I get into education. I've said this before about Donald Trump numerous times on the show, and my opinion and my objective approach at this remains the same. I believe that there is more going on than what the general public can comprehend. I think that there is way more happening than what we can understand, and it's not that we're all supposed to know all of the ins and outs, but we have a mind and we have the ability to think about all the different ins and outs. I also know that he's been widely criticized, and I've done the same thing, regarding his comment in that Zoom meeting from whatever it was, a week or two ago, basically saying that green cards should be attached to diplomas, to college and university diplomas, that if an illegal comes here and wants to go to school, they should be able to get some work-related, school-related visa, and then once they graduate, because they've apparently learned something here, so they like to think, that they should just immediately get citizenship. I disagree with this completely. I really do sit more on the side of we need to hire Americans for American jobs. And we need to train Americans to do American jobs. Because in my definition, that's America first. America first does not mean fly in illegals who want to learn here and then become employed here and then hire their own here from outside in and then just neglect the entire middle class and everybody else who exists in the United States who was born here legally and is an actual legal citizen looking for real work and a real career. And again, be able to afford a family and children and a home. And hopefully, again, destroy the entire lie of feminism that women need to be working all of the time and taxed, to the end of time, which, as we know, is destroying the family function and the way that the family is really supposed to operate. So I completely disagree with any kind of a move like that. If such a move were to be made, it's also possible that that comment that he made in that Zoom call was just said in an effort to garner some kind of a vote from individuals who are already legal citizens here. I don't know if that's the case either. But Americans can be trained to do any American job. That does not have to come from an Indian in India. It doesn't have to come from an Asian in an Asian country. It doesn't have to come from anybody else. It can come from hardworking Americans here who can't potentially maybe even imagine a life that they would have if they had a real job and a real career. So that's my take on it. I don't defend the comment for one reason or another. As often as he says America first, that comment doesn't fall in line with America first. And I fully understand he's taken money from the Jewish lobby and Jewish donors and a number of other things. I mean, I get it, and I don't like it. But at the exact same time, I also understand the optics of the whole thing, and that you have to play the optics game to some extent. So, yeah, that's kind of my comment. Again, I'm voting for him. I'm going to vote for him. And to anybody who says that, elections don't matter, regardless of how small or local they are, I beg to differ on that. I'm personally watching, and I haven't spoken about this too much, although I did in Monday's episode, and I have in some past episodes too, but I've personally watched what happens when you elect an outsider, so to speak, on a school board. And what ends up happening with that outsider when they are immediately attacked by all of the individuals who sit on a school board, and they do whatever they can to make sure that that individual does not get elected. And then, once they get elected, as was the case in the town where I live, the enemy goes after them again with everything that they have to try to squash them and get them to not know particular things that the board has been hiding or the board's been engaging in. But if the individual who is new to an elected position like that has connections, has communications, and knows how to go after the corruption, which is the case where I live, then you can upend the entire establishment. You can upend the entire thing locally. So elections do matter, and you can turn things around. And it's usually in moments like that when the enemy panics. When a good person gets elected to a specific position, that person has to understand how evil the individuals around them are, regardless of the particular office that they're holding. And then you have to not fight fire with fire, but when they pull out a blowtorch, you have to get in your airplane and drop napalm on top of them. If they make one move, you've got to make 10 moves. If they make 3 moves, you've got to make 20. And you just have to trump them with every single move that you make. So I'm not one to, again, say that elections are all rigged, because they're not all rigged. Again, the one in 2020 certainly was. 2018 certainly was. And I think the 2016 was taken from Hillary on a good thing, for a good reason. Because again, the vote was not only overwhelmingly for Trump, but there was cheating taking place even back then for Hillary. So yeah, voting does matter, and we have to do it, and we've got to do it again. And that's the way that it is. But again, I fully understand that a lot of the House races and a lot of the Senate races, both at the state and even federal level, are remarkably corrupt because it's two heads of the same snake. I fully understand that. There was another local race which I mentioned earlier in the show in the county where I live, where our state representative was outed, and a new state representative is going to be coming in, and this woman has openly stated as a preacher in a church that she knows, allegedly she said this, and I hope she really did say it, that the New World Order, i.e., and she said it, Jews are attempting to control the world. Now, I hope she has said this. I mean, I hope that's not just some left-wing, evil propaganda slander, so to speak, that they use against her. Her name is Diane Mullins, by the way. But I hope that she understands the much larger evil picture here, and that she goes for the enemy and exposes who these individuals are, regardless of where the corruption exists. So yeah, elections matter. That's my point. I don't like everything that everybody does. I don't think anybody does. But we also have to understand that there's way more going on than what we're actually seeing. So it's not that we have to sit around and do nothing. It's not that, we just twiddle our thumbs. I don't think anybody's suggesting anybody do that, and we certainly haven't been doing that. We've been doing a lot of different things, and communicating back and forth is one of the ways that business gets done. So there you go. That's kind of my rant on that. Okay, education stuff, and good Lord, this is some wild stuff. Here we go. This first story was sent to me by our Virginia educator, and I have to tell you, when I read this first, I thought to myself, this is a perfect example of illegal immigration. This is a perfect example of these schools getting a leg up, or I should say an advanced warning as to what they're going to have to do in order to stay afloat financially. Again, as we know, these colleges and universities all over the United States, their enrollment is dropping, and don't let them tell you otherwise. There's no way that their enrollment is increasing. I know of endless individuals who are getting their educations online. They're not attending brick and mortar because they see it not only as a waste of money, but a waste of literal time. The time that you spend moving from point A to point B, the time that you spend sitting in class listening to some other individual tell you things that they think you need to know, when in fact the person doing the instructing has no idea what they're talking about, and a number of other things. I mean, it is quite literally a waste of time. So here's what it said. This was titled from the VirginiaMercury.com. Virginia Education Board approves Old Dominion as fiscal agent for 5 lab schools. Now here's what these lab schools are going to entail. It says the colleges and universities that have received approval from the state will offer specialized instruction in areas such as computer science and technology. Lab school admission is based on a lottery system. Again, highly suspicious to me. More technology, more computer science combined with a lottery system for instruction. I think that this is, or for enrollment rather, I think this is going to be tied to bringing in illegals, because then you're bringing in foreign money, and you can increase the likelihood of receiving more money by increasing tuition for said individuals, and at the exact same time, edging out Americans. So here's what it says. It says, due to the budgetary decisions, 5 schools, Emory and Henry, and Roanoke colleges, and Mountain Gateway, Paul D. Camp and Germana, I'm saying that right, community colleges, chose to resubmit their applications. The school's applications were recommended for approval, but the lab school committee and subsequently approved by the board. It says applications are reviewed by the department and review committee before reaching the board. The groups review such areas as lab school curriculum details and budget assumptions. It says the five newly approved lab schools will use the rest of the state's lab school funds in the current budget, expiring June 30th. Governor Youngkin had proposed $60 million for lab schools over the next 2 years, but the legislature declined to add the funds to the spending plan they and Youngkin signed off on last month. And then there's a correction here, and it says an earlier version of this story stated the 5 lab school applications were previously rejected because they were private and 2-year institutions. They were instead approved. Again, it just reeks of bringing in illegal aliens. It reeks to me of moving the pieces parts around to make it fit for outside money and illegal aliens themselves. In fact, that brings me to this. I heard this story from a friend of mine earlier this week, and I even heard it again from them last week. And I asked for a few more specifics, but I trust this person, so it's hearsay, but at the exact same time, it wouldn't shock me in the slightest. Where I live, at Miami University in Ohio, I was told that a former employee of Miami who lives next to a friend of mine and is now retired, and I asked, well, what position did they have at Miami? And they said they don't know. But they said before they retired, as a Miami University employee, they were brought into a meeting with their other coworkers, and they were told by their higher-ups that Miami University is indebted to China, and that if Miami University does not pay off their debt to China by, I think it was 2026 or 2028, could have been 2026, we're 2 years away, that China will own Miami University, and that was part of the deal. So if that's true, and I have no reason to believe that it's not, I didn't even know it existed at first, and then I hear this, and I've asked it now twice, and I've received the same answer back twice, that Miami University can't possibly be the only university, of course, or college that is owned by a foreign country. Certainly China. We know how they're buying up farmland and commercial land and a number of other things. This all has to be illegal. All of it. In our country. All of the time. Letting foreign countries buy land and operate on our land as if it is theirs has to stop. This again is one of those major things that we have to see change. Now, I'm going to verbalize this, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm just thinking out loud here, and it's a thought that's been rolling around in the old brain pan for a little while. If we are in fact at war legally, under executive order and any other laws that Congress has re-upped or acts that they have re-upped over the years, certainly within the last, whatever it may be, 6+ years here, if all of that's true, then it would seem conceivable to me, looking from the outside in, that what would keep such a move from being made with just the stroke of a pen? That if Donald Trump came back into office and he simply signed into executive order that no foreign country basically has ownership over our land, nor what goes on that land, because we are still at war with foreign countries, thereby basically completely voiding any particular, whatever it was, order or deal that was made or contractual obligation or what have you, whether that be with Saudi Arabia or China or Israel or anything else. That with a simple stroke of the pen, our land becomes our land again. It seems like in a state of war you could do that. Again, I'm thinking out loud and being rather hopeful on the whole thing, and I know that you can hope in one hand and shit in the other, but it seems like that could be done. There's no indication that Joe Biden has done any of that, but what we're seeing, of course, all over the country, and I think the American people are certainly awake to this, is that all of this has been happening underneath our noses for a very long time, and we had no idea that China owned as much land in the United States as it does. Same thing with Bill Gates. How is it that Bill Gates gets to continue to buy land when Bill Gates is also working with other foreign countries and making other deals with foreign countries, and then all of the sudden Bill Gates has the ability to buy farmland in the United States? We should be able to sign an executive order that eliminates all of that in the blink of an eye. That any criminal and or foreign country has no say over what land they think they get to own in our country, therefore they don't get to own it, and then they don't get a say as to what actually happens on our land, even if we are the ones who own it. So, I don't know. Again, not a lawyer, like to pretend from time to time, but it seems like that's something that could be done very quickly given the current state of affairs, and given the fact that foreign governments and NGOs that apparently get to threaten to kill everybody all of the time, that we don't get to just destroy some of these deals that have apparently been made, or these sales of land and or businesses in the blink of an eye. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents on that one too, but I don't know. Time will tell, maybe. And even if it does take place, and those deals are voided in one form or fashion, it'll be interesting to see if we ever even hear about it. And I certainly hope that we would. Okay. There's also this. Our Louisiana educator sent me this, and this is a doozy. And this this is so funny, because this actually leads back to a June 20th hearing that took place on Congress, where all these education nitwits got together and they started to discuss on Capitol Hill, how exactly can we get teachers to be in the profession again? What can we do to put, a body with a pulse in a classroom? Because that's basically all they're looking for at this point. They're not looking for intelligent people, ladies and gentlemen, to be in American classrooms. They're looking for anybody with a pulse. So here's the news article they sent me, and they sent me a screenshot of this. It was titled, "School Board Confronts Changing Enrollment." It says the following, quote, "There is occasional talk about consolidation at St. Landry Parish School Board meetings, but no plans have been made public." It says, quote, "We are starting to talk about consolidating some schools," said board member Kyle Boss. Any action would be another year or two down the road, he said. Still, Mike Hefner of the Geographic Planning and Demographic Services spoke at Tuesday's school board committee of the whole meeting in Opelousas, if I'm saying that right, probably not. It says Hefner did a comprehensive enrollment project report to the board in 2017 that predicted the current enrollment decline. Quote, "Your enrollments have continued to decline," he said. "They actually declined more aggressively than we had anticipated back in 2017. Why would that be? Why is it that no one wants to go to school anymore since 2017? What's happened between now and 2017? Could it be the biggest lie or one of the largest medical lies that's ever taken place in the history of forever? Could it be the rampant child abuse that was sanctioned by everybody who participated? I'm just shooting from the hip here, who knows? Of course it's all of those things. It's ridiculous. And you look at this picture, I mean, bless their hearts. These people sitting around these tables listening to this old-timer talk, and not a single one of them in this room has a clue as to what's going on. It goes on here. It says, quote, "Hefner advised the board that it is now time to get more up-to-date full review of enrollment and external factors that affect the school's district needs." Oh my. The external factors are government telling you what to do and brainwashing you into believing that what you're doing is correct and that the thing that apparently is going on is real, when in fact it's not. It goes on, it says the assumptions in the 2017 study are likely changing, he said, as reasons for a new study which he estimated would cost up to $12,500. I'm sure it would, and it would go right into his pocket. See, I could show up to this school board and tell them why their enrollments are declining for free. Now, it might come with a slight little slap across the face for all of them to wake up a little bit, but I would do it for free. It says board member Joyce Haynes said, quote, because consolidation has been a bad word, just knowing we are talking about it sends a bad connotation to the public. It's a business move. As you've heard me say, if you have 5 t-shirt shops, I mean, it's just business, and it's bad business because you're all bad business people. If you have 5 t-shirt shops and there are less people buying t-shirts because the t-shirts you sell suck, you've got to knock those t-shirt shops down into 3, 2, and maybe even 1. Because you don't know what you're doing. The product you sell is garbage, is proven to be garbage year after year after year. And you're taking so much outside influence that it's corrupting the minds, the hearts, and the souls, and the actual material that you use to do your so-called education, all in that same environment. And you wonder why no one's coming to buy your product anymore. It goes on, it says, to counter that negative view, Haynes said the board needs to be involved in the community in the conversation and information about the school district. Quote, anything you can bring us demographically is important, but also the community and board, hang on just a minute while I open up this next window, needs to be understanding every piece, she said. Hefner agreed. Quote, I'm always a believer in the more the public knows about what you are looking at, the more they will understand your decisions. They may not like the decisions, but at least they will understand the decision. It says the numbers are going to tell a story about what needs to be done, he said. Board member Renee Amond, noted making predictions is becoming difficult due to expansion of charter schools and vouchers. Actually, no, I can make the prediction for you as a public school. You're going to collapse. That's the prediction. And it's not a prediction. I'm not shooting in the dark here. That's a scientific method, educated guess beginning with a hypothesis and arriving at a conclusion after running numerous experiments in society where you can see where this is going. And it's a good thing. They, of course, view it as a bad thing because this is how they make their money. But this is a good thing. It goes on, it says, mapping out trends has become more complicated, Hefner said. Board member Hazel Sias, if I'm saying that right, said whatever a study finds, the board should follow its advice. Well, I'd be careful about that. But regarding consolidation, yeah, if you want to stay afloat to some extent, that's the only way you get it done. It says one fact the study begins with is St. Landry Parish public enrollment is just under 12,000 students. The 2017 enrollment project for the parish public schools was almost 13,000 students. In 2013, enrollment was 14,808 students. You're losing students for a variety of reasons. They're waking up from the matrix. Their parents are waking up from the matrix. They've seen the abuse that you've engaged in. What they're seeing and what they're reading in society, in life, in social media, in old books, a number of different things, does not match up with what is going on within the school system. And when the school system says, put your phone down, stop looking at that, that's not real. Just because you saw it on social media doesn't mean it's real. As soon as all of that is brought up, all you're doing is putting more questions in the individual's mind. And squashing on the truth is never a winning formula. So, yeah, you're losing students. There's no doubt about it. She also highlighted this point of the article. And this is, again, where the article generally ends because I don't have access to the rest of it, but it says the following. It says, one reason for the budget reduction is the district is about to lose enrollment with the Helix charter schools to open in the 25-26 school year. Board member Renee Amond said from 2017 to 2024, the school district lost 2,412 students, which represents nearly $10 million in state revenue lost. Bingo. You're finished. And this is how it gets done. This is how you collapse the public school system. But see, this brings me to something else too. And again, that's a perfect on the ground real example of intel that's happening all over the United States. It's happening everywhere. And these schools are experiencing this at different paces and at different times. But it's all been happening certainly within the last 4+ years here. So that actually leads me to this, which is a story that Cicely sent me. And we've discussed this on the show before, and it's worth bringing up again because this actually came from May 14th of this year. And this is from scientificamerican.com. And here's what it was titled: Children Deserve Uniform Standards in Homeschooling. Now ask yourself if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's actually communism. They don't deserve uniform anything because that's not freedom and independence. Freedom and independence is you have the freedom to learn and the independence to learn what's really out there without any restriction. See, this right here again, this is a concept that's so difficult for people to get, and yet it is so simple. Any restriction on learning, whether that restriction be the discouragement to learn or withholding information from individuals on either side of the spectrum, so to speak, and then in the middle, as sort of the albatross or the umbrella and dark cloud over the whole thing, is any legal intervention that takes place in order to squash what is going on within the homeschool setting. That right there is a war that is not only always going on, but it's one that the enemy government is preparing for. And there's two avenues that they're using to get to this, to basically arrive at these means. They're going to be using, as it states in the article, the abuse angle. That if you are home learning and your children are home learning, then it must be an abusive environment. Which we've been over this on the show before, but again, regarding this article, it deserves a revisit. Is that when the public school government indoctrination, torture, MK Ultra, high technology, wireless body area network system, I know it's a mouthful, but that's all that happens there. When all of that is going on and is starting to crumble because of a lack of participation, which is the fastest way that you make it crumble, you'd better bet your bottom dollar that government is going to do whatever they can to impede on your right and your child's right to learn freely. This is why Thomas Jefferson should be almost everyone's favorite president, because he was the one who openly said, time and time again, children should learn in their own environment. And parents should have the responsibility to help facilitate said learning. But it shouldn't be limited to just one avenue or another, or one area or another. And then, most importantly, government should never have a say in it. Imagine where we'd be as a society if government never touched education. And it's not education, as I said earlier, it's torture. It's indoctrination. It's literal brainwashing. That's why those of us who are awake understand that what gets taught in an American school is not factually accurate by any stretch of the imagination. If I hear the term gravity one more time, I'm going to burst a blood vessel in my eyeball. I'm telling you. I mean, that right there, just like I said in the last episode with looking at people's wrists and seeing whether or not they're wearing an Apple Watch. When I hear someone use the term gravity, I just shudder. And gravity doesn't exist. There's no such thing. It's a made-up term. There's density and buoyancy. It's that simple. Things fall to the ground because they are more dense than the air around them. But people use this made-up term that Sir Isaac Newton created, or the Freemasons around Sir Isaac Newton created, and, there you have it. Anyway, sorry, I digress, but here's what the subtitle says. It says, with few states tracking who is being homeschooled, oh no. It says what they are learning, rather, an untold number of U.S. children are at risk for a poor education or even abuse. This is how they're framing it. They're framing it as you're keeping children away from the truth. And as we know, they have to accuse their enemy, i.e., the family, parents, and children and society as a whole. They have to tell them the thing that they themselves are doing and accuse them of the thing that they themselves are doing. Now, I want to read this, and then I want to play the audio from this congressional hearing that happened with the Education and Workforce Labor Board, because it's beyond pathetic. So here's what the article, again, went on to say. It says, quote, the number of children being educated at home, which is underlined for some reason, has been growing for the past few decades. No one knows by how much, and that is part of the problem. See, government wants to track you all the time. It says homeschooling is barely tracked or regulated in the U.S., but children deserve a safe and robust education whether they attend a traditional school or educated at home. Well, that's not up to government, because look what government's been doing this whole time. It says the National Center for Education Statistics, NCES, reported that by last count in 2019, nearly 3% of U.S. children, 1.5 million, were being homeschooled. This number, calculated from a nationwide survey, is surely an undercount because the homeschooling population is notoriously hard to survey, and more children have been homeschooled since the COVID pandemic began. There is no COVID, there was no pandemic. They just don't like child abuse. It says 11 states do not require parents to inform anyone that they are homeschooling a child. And in most of the country, once a child has exited the traditional schoolroom environment, no one checks to ensure they are receiving an education at all. That's not up to government. That's not up to government. And as Thomas Jefferson would say, not everybody needs an education. Not everybody is educatable. That's called freedom and independence. I mean, that's part of it. It says homeschooled students have won the National Spelling Bee. One was the most prolific mathematician in history. Many are well-rounded and well-adjusted children who go on to thrive as adults, but others do not receive a meaningful education, and too many have suffered horrific abuse. The federal government must develop basic standards for safety and quality of education in homeschooling across the country, and there you have it. That's their goal. That's what they want. That's what they're working toward. They're working toward the long arm of the law and the long hand of government tickling your back and getting right into your actual home and telling you what you need to do. This can't happen. But this is their last move. Criminalizing homeschooling is the next thing. But people have a constitutional right to do so. It falls under the First Amendment. Freedom of religion, freedom of assembly. It's a First Amendment thing. It says when a traditional classroom setting cannot meet the educational, social, or emotional needs of a child, homeschooling can allow parents to take over. For children facing bullying or gun violence, or good Lord, or who need more challenging or more advanced schoolwork, a homeschooling environment may be the best. But many parents are attracted to homeschooling because they want to have more say in what their child learns and what they do not. Nearly 60% of homeschool parents who responded to the 2019 NCES survey said that religious instruction was a motivation in their decision to educate at home. Some Christian homeschooling curricula teach young earth creationism instead of evolution. No, it's just called God. But whatever. Other curricula describe slavery as black immigration or extol the virtues of Nazism. And there you have it. That didn't take long. Didn't take long to work that derogatory term into their into their article. This is great. This is great. I love it. There's no such thing as Nazism, number one. There's just accurate German history. So there's that. There's accurate World War II history, of course, which you're not going to get in a K-12 school, public, private, or charter for that matter. And as far as black immigration goes, quote unquote, well, there was black slavery in Africa. And what we received over here in the United States were individuals who were already slaves and individuals who had lost wars in Africa against other African tribes. So, is that going to get brought up in a K-12 public, private, or charter school? No. It goes on. It says, quote, some children may not be receiving any instruction at all. Okay. It says most states don't require homeschooled kids to be assessed on specific topics the way their classroom-based peers are. And they're smarter for it, usually. It says this practice enables educational neglect that can have long-lasting consequences for a child's development. That's not up to government. That's up to the family. If the family wants to keep information from their child or not read books with their child or not give their child nonfiction books to read instead of all the fantasy nonsense, then that's up to the parents. That's not up to government. Because they get plenty of that fake nonsense in a K-12 school. I mean, the irony of this article is that she's, well, I'm assuming it's a she. Let me see here very quickly. I don't want to get that wrong. Oh, it's, okay. It's by the editors. So God knows who wrote this. But even so, the irony of them defending the public system at the expense of the homeschool system and then defending government at the expense of the parents and the family, that right there should tell you their motive. That's their motive. More government, less family. That's communism. That's Marxism. That's Bolshevism. It's not Nazism. It says, in the worst cases, homeschooling hides abuse. Here it comes. In 2020, an 11-year-old boy in Michigan was found dead after his stepmother used homeschooling to conceal years of torture. A small study of children who had been seriously abused found that 8 of 17 school-aged victims were ostensibly being homeschooled. In these cases, homeschooling was a farce, a hole in children's social safety net for abusers to exploit. Oh my God. This is like blaming the gun when a black shoots someone with a gun, or a Mexican, or a white, or an Asian shoots someone with a gun. They call it gun violence. Now look what they're doing. They're calling it homeschooling violence. Homeschooling hides abuse. No, the parent was abusive. Arrest the parent. You don't blame the thing they're doing. I mean, what next? Are they going to go into the cupboard and say they're eating Fruit Loops? They're eating Raisin Bran as a cereal. It's Raisin Bran's fault. Everybody knows that Raisin Bran hides abuse. These people are completely illogical. It goes on, it says, although it's impossible to say how commonly homeschooling conceals abuse, data from Connecticut paint a concerning picture. It says, following the abuse and 2017 death of an autistic teenager whose mother had removed him from school, Connecticut's Office of the Child Advocate, CPS, found that 36% of children withdrawn from 6 nearby districts to be homeschooled lived in homes that had been subject to at least one report of suspected abuse or neglect. So, 36 of individuals who left the public school system, out of 6 districts, one home was abusing a child. I mean, we're talking about less than 1% of the stats here. This is beyond embarrassing. If this is their justification, well, they've missed the mark. It says not one state checks with Child Protective Services to determine whether the parent of children being homeschooled have a history of abuse or neglect. I don't think that's up to government. A couple more paragraphs here and then I'm done. It says homeschooling advocacy organizations promote studies that claim to show equal or higher levels of academic achievement among homeschooled students. But these studies often are conducted by homeschooling advocates and are methodologically flawed, so they say. It's difficult for social scientists to recruit representative samples for more rigorous research because of lax reporting requirements and the underground nature of homeschooling, making the kind of sweeping comparison between homeschooling and non-homeschooling students that some groups report impossible. Oh my God. Okay. First of all, don't ever fill out a survey from government about you as a homeschooler or a home learner or whatever term they use. Don't fill it out. Crumple it up and throw it away. You want to take screenshots of it? Great, but burn it. Get rid of it. Never send it back to government. Don't ever do that, because anytime we do that, what they're doing is they're seeking to gather that information to then formulate their nonsense regulations, i.e. bills and acts and laws, and then reimpose the information that they've gathered from you that they, of course, have manipulated to justify their stance as government in coming after the citizen. Don't participate in your own destruction is basically what I'm saying, because this is what they're openly telling you they want to do. And you operate in a underground nature. Ooh, it makes it sound so mysterious. It says, despite this, in 40 states, parents do not need to have even a high school level education to educate their children at home. Correct. Some of the smartest people I've ever met are high school dropouts. That's always been the case, no matter where you go. Education does not equate to intelligence. Papers in frames on walls do not equate to intelligence. It has nothing to do with it. It says the federal government usually leaves issues of education for states to decide, and homeschooling is no exception. A dizzying maze of laws and legal precedents governs parents' ability to homeschool, and the rules differ in each state and sometimes even differ between school districts. Whenever a piece of state legislation is suggested or introduced to regulate some aspect of homeschooling, advocacy organizations such as the Homeschool Legal Defense Association fight back. Good. That's why the NRA exists. Hopefully. It's for the exact same thing. It's for people who seek to undermine our constitutional rights. It says this year, Michigan's Education Department proposed a registry of homeschooled students in the state and was met with fierce pushback. Good. It says in 2023, Ohio removed all assessment requirements for homeschooled students. Yes, we did. South Dakota, Vermont, and New Hampshire have also removed some oversight requirements in the past few years. Excellent. Self-governance is a beautiful thing. It said it is clear that homeschooling will continue to lack accountability for outcomes or even for basic safety in most states. Well, go to hell. That's not up to government, and that's your predetermined answer that you're sticking with. It says, but federal mandates for reporting and assessment to protect children don't need to be onerous. It says, for example, homeschool parents could be required to pass an initial background check as every state requires for all K12 teachers. No, absolutely not. It says homeschool instructors could be required to submit documents every year to their local school district or to a state agency to show that their children are learning. No, absolutely not. It says education is a basic human right. That's what they say in the last paragraph. That's their first sentence in the last paragraph. They don't believe that, though. It says we need to make sure kids have chances to investigate what makes them curious. Do you? Study history and science and reading and ask questions and learn from others. That is not what the K-12 government system has in mind. That is not what they do. And then they wrapped up with one last sentence. We want them to reach adulthood ready to take on the world, unquote. No, you don't. Because if they were ready to take on the world, they'd destroy government, and they'd come after your ass. If they knew, as school students and as families, that the school system was permanently brainwashing them for years to come, they'd all pull them out right now, today, as I'm talking. That article infuriates me, and it should anger everybody. It's government against us, ladies and gentlemen, and they're not going to quit until we're all dead. They're not going to quit making excuses for their stances on things until everybody bends the knee. And we can't do that. We can't do it. That brings me to the audio from this past, it was June 20th. My apologies. And this is from the Senate Health Committee. It was titled this, Senate Health Committee holds hearing on challenges facing public school teachers. Oh, I could tell you all the reasons, but they won't have any of it. In fact, instead of having someone like me show up and testify to tell them why they have all the shortages they have, they bring in at least two nitwits to basically justify what they're actually doing. This is a 9-minute, 45-second clip. I want to play the whole thing. This is going to disgust you because the questions never get answered. It's just justification of why they're doing what they're doing, and don't worry, we have all these programs and we have all these programs. And then they talk to a gay black male who was a paraprofessional for 15 some odd years, so he says, and then became a school teacher. And as you've heard me say here on the show before, doing whatever they can do as K-12 public private charter school districts in order to get individuals to get within these professions who are either already there and are uncertified, or create backdoor ways of them to get certified by easing the certification standards. That's their motive. That's what they're seeking to do. The shortage is so bad that, like I said, certainly in the school where I worked over 10 years ago, they were hiring individuals who could hardly speak English. They were making these hires. So what do you think they're going to do with the illegals that are pouring into our schools now and pouring into our country now? They're going to allow them to enter these schools. And as I said toward the top of this episode, think about Miami University and these other colleges. If foreign countries own them, or even whatever, the local state happens to own these universities, with low enrollment, what's their last option in order to increase enrollment? As a university, for example, and as students, it's to bring in illegals. It isn't any different when you actually become a school teacher. Their only solution is to fill the profession with illegals. It's one of. There are other avenues, but anyway. Here's the 9 minutes and 45-second clip, and trust me, not a single question logically gets answered. And they think that this is the solution to all their problems, and my God, are they wrong. So give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you. I want to thank you all for appearing here today, and especially to our teachers on the panel. You do the essential work of educating our children, oftentimes doing whatever it takes to ensure that your students have access to the information and materials that they need to learn. But we know that comes at a cost, and we need to make more investments in you, our nation's educators. Wisconsin is facing what our state superintendent of public instruction, Dr. Jill Underly, has referred to as an education workforce in crisis. The Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction recently released their annual report on educator preparation and workforce in our state. This year's report found that we have shortcomings, including with teacher retention. 4 out of every 10 teachers either leave the profession or leave the state in their first 6 years. This shortage of teachers is especially pronounced when it comes to special education teachers. 74% of the schools in Wisconsin state that they have 1 or more vacancies for a special education educator, and more than a third of those schools were not able to find a teacher to fill that vacancy. Dr. Curran, I want to thank you for your testimony. Educators are the key in-school factor for student success, and I appreciate your testimony's focus on the need to support and pay them accordingly. I want to focus on the 4th pillar of Maryland's plan related to investments in students from low-income families and multilingual learners and students with disabilities. Last year, the House Education Appropriations Bill crafted by the House Republicans would have cut federal education investment by 80% for Title I-A. That's a program that's intended to provide extra support to schools serving low-income students. It also proposed eliminating the $890 million Title III program that supports multilingual learners. And it proposed cutting $2 billion for the Supporting Effective Instruction State Grant Program. This year, their planned cuts to non-defense spending looks likely to produce a bill that does much of the same that I just described them drafting last year. So does this sound like the approach of the high-performing systems that the commission reviewed? And what would be the ramifications? And can you say something about the government buy-in in those other countries, Finland, Singapore, in Canada, for their high-performing systems?
Yes, thank you, Senator Baldwin, for that question. As you noted, one of the principles that we discovered in these high performing systems is the investment they make in students with the greatest need, and including most especially students coming from low income families. And so that's why the blueprint has really focused on what we call community schools. A community school in Maryland is one that is serving 55% or more low income students. And these schools get significantly extra funding for tutors, for after school academic programming, for summer academic program. They have extra health services in the school. They have a coordinator who can connect children in those schools with the social services in the region. And so it's our recognition that we need to concentrate resources on these kids that are growing up in very difficult circumstances. And so any kind of reduction in Title I funding would just, in my mind, exacerbate the problems we're facing.
Thank you. Mr. Keyes, as communities grapple with the shortage of teachers, more schools are establishing so-called grow your own programs. These programs are often focused on either introducing and encouraging high school students to pursue the field of education or providing programs focused on helping individuals already in the profession, such as para-educators and substitute teachers gaining teachers' licenses. You have a remarkable story on how you came to the education profession, starting as a school bus attendant. I understand you worked as a paid teacher resident while earning your teaching credential and master's degree in special education. Can you explain the paraprofessional to teacher program you participated in and the benefits of these grow your own programs and how the federal government can better support these programs?
The paraprofessional to teacher program that I was a part of, it's called Para Pathways. Pretty much what it does is open up the pathway to teaching to the paraprofessional staff, many of whom, like myself, have been working in that paraprofessional position for years. I was a paraprofessional for 16 years. And what it does is it looks at the paraprofessionals based on their level of schooling. If you got some credits, college credits, you start off on this one. If you got a bachelor's, you start here. If you got an associate's, you start here. I went through the residency program because I had my bachelor's. And what that did was that put me in a position to work under a mentor teacher for a whole school year, meaning I didn't have to do any student teaching. I didn't have to have a period of time where I was without pay. And to me, the benefit of that was I got to learn the ins and outs of the paperwork side of it. Because when you're working in education and when you work with children every day, regardless of if you're certified or not, you know how to teach. You know how to be there for your students on every level, from bus attendant to paraprofessional. You work with these kids every day, you know what you're doing. What that Pathways program does is gives an insight on what it takes to deliver the curriculum, what it takes to be effective at the way that you deliver the curriculum, what it takes to understanding for me, the special education laws and the ins and outs of what it is to be a special educator. It also gives you a kind of inside look on some of the different challenges that you're going to face when going into the classroom. Now, with that Pathways program, some of the people who were in the residency portion didn't go through that Pathways program. There were people coming from corporate America, coming from the military, because that residency program is open to anyone that wants to be a teacher. And what I realized, and what my school, Temple University, realized, that a lot of the people coming from outside of education, they don't have a clue what it's like in the classroom. And some of them didn't even make it through the program. And some of them made it through the program. But once they got in the classroom on their own, they didn't make it. We have some who quit less than a year in. So I think for me, the Grow Your Own type of program, you have people who have been doing the job. You have people who want to do the job. The only thing that's holding them back is the financial part. I know myself, what held me back years from going back to school was the financial aspect of it, was going into debt. Like I said, as a classroom assistant, $16,000 is what you start with, 30 is what you end with. Me looking at that and everything else that I have to do, rent, food, taking care of myself, paying for school, was like, can't do that. But with this program, it makes it accessible. It makes it something that can happen. I mean, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. We got 100 people who have gone through this program as of fall, and more are interested every day because they see the need for high quality teachers, and they see that it's time for them to step up to the plate and be that high quality teacher. And also, another aspect of the program that hopefully will start to come to fruition is to start recruiting in high school, recruiting some of the people who are in high school that may be interested in education, having them start as paraprofessionals, just so that they know what it's like to be in the classroom environment. They know what it's like to teach.
Mr. Keys, if I could ask you to summarize, you're well over time.
Oh, my bad. That's my thing. That's my thing. And I love this program. I had a lot to do.
I let you because I'm really interested in this.
That's the answer.
Thank you. And thanks to all the...
Okay, first of all, not to be disrespectful, again, congratulations to him, the second guy. Good for him. He was a paraprofessional, became a school teacher, got paid more money, wanted to do it. Good for him. He's not awake. He's in the matrix. Very difficult to work in the business if you're awake. Either way, good for him. Quick business question, though. Given the fact that he was a paraprofessional and then was recruited by the school to be a classroom teacher because there was a need for classroom teachers, who does the job that the paraprofessional was doing now that there's no paraprofessional there anymore? So you're hiring a school teacher because you need a school teacher, but you're removing the roles and responsibilities of a paraprofessional, which means you still have to hire now another paraprofessional. And he said it himself, that they're growing your own. I found that phrase to be very interesting. Grow your own. Grow them from within. They do that because it's easier. It's not because it's always right. It's not because they're really getting the best person for the said position. They're usually just getting somebody, again, who has a pulse, who is there because it's convenient, and they'll do what they're told. It also, as you heard him say, I'm actually working my notes backwards here, it actually can create a remarkably divisive environment, working environment, because you heard him say some individuals who have never been in the field of education come into these kinds of programs to learn how to be a school teacher. They either don't make it through the program or they become bad teachers once they do make it through the program. And then there are some who become very good teachers, apparently. Well, it's a gossipy environment. Everybody in the environment's looking around and looking at each other and measuring each other and where did they come from and what's their education and what experience did they have and blah, 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 blah. And it's always just this constant competition that is completely unnecessary. Has nothing to do with the fact that everybody is being brainwashed in the environment, from the administration down to the teachers and right into the lap of the actual classroom students themselves. Again, you're never going to hear the real problems get brought up in a congressional hearing regarding education. Not ever. It's their hook that they have in everybody's back. And then, of course, the first guy who spoke, his solution was simple. That government's solution to government's created problems is more government. That was basically the best summarizing I can do of what he said. Well, we have this program, and we need this program, and we need this legislation, and we need this. Yes, we caused all these problems, and yes, we're never going to admit that we caused all these problems. But we need more government, and government is the thing that will fix all of this for all of us. He couldn't be further from the truth. This is why it's failing. Because no one is telling them the truth about what they're doing, and they're certainly not admitting it nor seeing it. And if you're standing on the train tracks and you don't know there's a train coming, what do you think is going to happen? So there you go. That's the education stuff I have. I had one more thing, but I'm going to save that for a little bit later. I'll save that for Monday's episode. Here we go. Jab stuff. I have some audio with this too. Real interesting audio as well. But first I want to mention this. Our Louisiana educator sent me this also, along with a quick little personal story. They sent me a chart here. It says the following. Breast cancer younger than 45 years of age in the United States. And this is data from cancer.org. In 2019, there were 26,660 cases of breast cancer among individuals younger than 45 years old. In 2020, there were 26,500 cases. In 2021, 26,510 cases. In 2022, there were 47,000 cases. And in 2023, there were 297,000 cases. And God only knows how much there's been thus far, certainly at the end of 2023 and then well into now the first half of 2024. They also sent me this. They said the following. They said, just this week, 2 young moms under 40. Aggressive late-stage breast cancer just this week. I know both are jabbed and boosted because they are both nurses working in hospitals. It's happening everywhere. This is nonstop. It's nonstop. And this past week, just the other day, again, this would have been, let me see here, June 26th, the House Judiciary Committee had a hearing that was titled Follow the Science? Oversight of the Biden COVID-19 Administrative State Response. Now, how do you think this one went? You have on this panel what is seemingly 3 doctors and then attorney Aaron Siri from the ICANN organization. Aaron Siri is the one who's been gathering all of the legal information on how the shots are killing the people who take them and maiming them, along with, of course, all of the workplace coercion and 1,000 other things, losing your job because you wouldn't take the shots and everything else. but the other doctors are complete nitwits. And these guys are bought, sold, blackmailed, getting paid by the actual industry themselves, you name it. There's an audio rundown here that I want to do of a Democrat congressman. Let me see if I can get his name here. A Mr. Correa. And he goes down the line with these individuals and asks them a series of questions, basically yes or no. This right here will tell you that government is not going to solve anybody's problems. Doesn't matter if it's on the left or the right. I'll commend Congressman Massey. He was the one chairing this entire committee. And again, in his opening statements, he was openly describing how the individuals who were working behind the scenes with the testing agents of these shots, that they had serious concerns about the timeline and that they were getting fired and removed and repositioned around these companies when they were openly stating their concerns with these shots. That's all fine and dandy. It's actually not. It's not a good thing at all, of course, because that means that, of course, the truth is being squashed. But they can have these back and forth discussions. The problem, of course, is that there is no spoon. There is no COVID. There is no vaccine that saves or helps anybody. They all maim and they all kill. That's what they all do. Now ask yourself whether or not you're about to hear that in this line of questioning from a Democrat toward these other individuals. And again, I didn't watch the full, whatever it was. There were some breaks in between, but it was rather long. It was almost 4 hours. I didn't watch all of it, as you might expect. But either way, I want to play this particular series of questioning again from this Congressman Correa. So here it comes in 3, 2, 1.
Thank the gentleman from Oregon. I now recognize the ranking member from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Drs. Pravia and Dr. Krause. I have a letter in front of me from a group of people advocating against COVID-19 mandate vaccine. I want to read a few statements from this letter that are a bit more medically nuanced and ask you, if you can, to answer either yes or no, if you agree with these statements. I'm going to start out with Dr. Pavia. First statement, the vaccines are injuring and killing historically large number of people.
That's patently untrue.
The vaccines reduce the health of all vaccinated populations.
No evidence of that.
Antibody-dependent enhancements, or ADE, from the vaccines could cause millions of deaths.
That statement's untrue and was evaluated as a potential adverse event during the studies. Dr. Krause could speak to that.
The risks of children dying from COVID is still statistically zero.
That one makes my blood boil, having seen children die. 1,700 children died of COVID, and that's probably an underestimate.
Dr. Krause, I'm going to ask you the same questions. First statement, the vaccines are injuring and killing a historically large number of people. Yes, no?
I would say no, without knowing what historically large means.
Thank you. The vaccines reduce the health of all vaccinated populations.
I would say no.
Thank you. Antibody-dependent enhancement, or ADE, from the vaccine could cause millions of deaths.
That was a concern early in the development of the vaccines, but that was addressed with a number of different studies, and so I would say no.
Thank you. Finally, the risk of children dying from COVID is still statistically zero.
And there, of course, as Dr. Pavia points out, the answer to that is also no.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. You follow up another question. Dr. Pavia, you talked about the devastating consequences of misinformation on vaccines. We've declared that measles was eradicated in the year 2000, but now we have had several outbreaks of measles across the country, including in my district, my hometown of Anaheim, California. The first reported case was an unvaccinated child, but as a result, 131 Californians were infected and 16 people in other states, as well as 160 people in Canada, almost all unvaccinated. I am concerned that people do not understand how serious measles cases are, and disinformation campaigns impact so many people, including threatening pregnant women and infants. Can you comment?
The parents I speak to only want good information. They're trying to make the best decision, but they're confused and misled by huge amounts of information on the internet. If they have a chance to speak to their provider, they usually will make the decision to vaccinate their children. Unfortunately, what we're seeing now is that confusion often causes decision paralysis for parents, and that is making their children vulnerable to measles.
Confusion resulting because misinformation, conflicting information. We all want to do the best we can for our children, for our families. They get conflicting information, so essentially you have paralysis when it comes to these medical decisions.
You essentially have the problem of false equivalency. When you read something on Facebook, you don't know that that is different than well-run studies that involved hundreds of thousands of children. And so parents are understandably misled. Sometimes that misleading is actually intentional.
Why would that be intentional misleading?
Because there are people who believe passionately that vaccines are bad, that they're dangerous, and that they're part of a conspiracy to make money for Big Pharma.
Dr. Pavia, there's been a lot of discussion about the COVID-19 vaccines and boosters. I saw firsthand the fear and angst among doctors and patients before the vaccines arrived. It's clear to me that these vaccines are safe and effective and have saved many American lives. Do you believe vaccines save lives?
Absolutely.
Do you think that the government recommendations for vaccines were accurate and helped bring normal state of being in our lives?
The availability of vaccines helped get people back to work. It helped them survive the infection. It helped our economy get back on track. It was incredibly important.
Can you tell us about your experience with COVID, especially during the winter of 2021, and how that impacted the medical profession and your patients?
The winter of 21-22 is when the Omicron wave surged, and it really overwhelmed an exhausted workforce. It caused close to record levels of hospitalization and deaths. And at that point, we had a decimated and exhausted workforce. So we saw patients dying of treatable illnesses like heart attacks because we couldn't get to them. We saw our adult hospital having to build an extra 50-bed emergency ICU to take the overflow. It was very helpful that our healthcare providers had gotten an additional dose of vaccine and felt more protected being able to come to work under those circumstances.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pavia. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
The doctor you heard talking there is a Andrew T. Pavia, MD, from the University of Utah. And he's killed copious amounts of people. I don't know what else to say. He's a murderer. He's probably killed men, women, children of all ages, does not matter. Everything he said is a lie. Every single word. You couldn't be more in the matrix and further from reality than him. I found his use of the phrase decision paralysis to be remarkably insulting, and everybody should be insulted by that. He's openly stating that when there is a false equivalency, which there is, then by default, you should rely on medical doctors, not think for yourself. Or not say to yourself, look at all these individuals on social media and what they're saying. How about we just revisit that old saying, better safe than sorry. I feel fine now, so I won't take anything. Why not just do that? But not according to him. Vaccines save lives, and everything is just fine. Well, it's not fine. In fact, even Aaron Siri spoke a little bit later, shortly after, regarding some questioning from Thomas Massey, and he completely disagreed with everything that Dr. Pavia said, and said that's not what I'm seeing, and that's certainly not the case. And yes, it isn't the case. So instead of playing more from that hearing, which again was well over 4+ hours, let me just read some headlines here. This is from eccentricsubstack.com, titled Brain Killer, The Ugly Truth of the mRNA Mindfuck. from 1,000% increases in military neuro disorders to astronomical rises in Alzheimer's and cognitive impairments in the public, the horrors can no longer be denied. Hey, Dr. Pavia, go fuck yourself. How about this one? Vigilant Fox. This was titled, Groundbreaking Study Discovers Off Switch for mRNA COVID-19 Injections. Now, I'm a little skeptical of this because it comes from Dr. McCullough, but at the exact same time, the simple fact that they're looking to how to turn this bio-nanotech metal particle hooked to the cloud information off inside of your body is something that Dr. Pavia doesn't even know is going on. Here's another one. This is from the Daily Mail. Finland to roll out vaccines for bird flu next week in world's first as human cases of virus spreads across the globe. If anybody believes this at this point, you cannot be saved. You just can't. There's also this one. This is from Dr. Anna Maria Mihalcha, MD, PhD. Venison from the Pacific Northwest dark field blood analysis. Polymers, filaments, and nanoparticles found and tracking of biological life via quantum dot nanoparticles. Yes, that's right. They're finding the metal in deer blood. And all of this fluorescent nanoparticle, whatever, in water fleas that were released in the water, it says, in Texas by the EPA also. So why are they finding it in insects and in wildlife? How is it getting into them? Chemtrails? Landing on water, landing on their food source. Maybe it's in pesticides that are being spread in farm fields. Who's to know? Certainly chemtrails, we know that to be a fact. But I wonder if Dr. Pavia knows about that. I'm guessing not. There's also this one. This is from the Telegraph.co.uk. New strain of monkeypox causes miscarriages and spreads rapidly without sexual contact, experts warn. That's the headline from June 25th. There is no monkeypox. There's no such thing. There are symptoms and then a made-up name. And those symptoms are actually a designed side effect from the COVID shots themselves. It says so in the Pfizer documentation. And of course, the part of this about causing miscarriages, well, they're jabbed. And then it says spreads rapidly without sexual contact. Well, how could that be? That's because it spreads through electromagnetism. That's why, i.e., shedding. Dr. Pavia doesn't know this either because he's a murderer. Oh my God. Ladies and gentlemen, you're never going to get the truth out of Congress. You're not. And at the end of the day, you're going to have a panel of doctors and a panel of other people who disagree with them sitting right next to each other, bringing up the very false equivalency that Dr. Pavia references. And at the exact same time, he believes that he's on the side that is correct. When it's impossible that both sides are correct, someone is wrong. But it's not going to be him as far as he knows and as far as he's concerned. I bet his mind will change. Eventually, in this life or the next, he's going to be presented with the truth, and it's going to destroy him. There are doctors everywhere, ladies and gentlemen, who know what they've done to their patients. They know. And they're running for the hills. And they should be. Because with every passing day, more and more people are figuring out what's going on, and with every passing day, more and more people who participated are figuring out what they've done, both to themselves and the people around them. There's no avoiding it. It is biblical. There's no doubt about it. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. As always, I will catch you on Monday, and that will be the last episode for a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, but stay tuned for that. And enjoy the debate. If you didn't see it, I'm sure it'll be interesting. With that said, take care and peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.